Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood world film geek Albert Valentin. Welcome to the season two premiere of the Video Store Geek podcast, where I talk about movies made or released during the home video era. Today, we are kicking off 2026 with the 1985 film Ghoulies. Now, for the first four episodes this season, I'm going to be covering all four Ghoulies films. So, of course, we're going to start with the original. This one's directed by Luca Bercovici, who also co-wrote it with Jeffrey Levy. Charles Band served as executive producer on this, and it stars the likes of Peter Liapis, Lisa Pelican, Michael Desbar, Scott Thompson, and a film debuting Mariska Hargitay. This is a story of a man who, after inheriting his family's estate, discovers that his parents were involved with the occult, and the result is the unleashing of these little monsters, the titular ghoulies, who wreak havoc on the estate and all of our lead character and his friends, while the lead character slowly sinks into madness. So, as always, we're going to talk about the film and give you little tidbits, little production trivia and stuff like that. So, let's just get right to it. So, the film starts out with Malcolm Graves. He's the leader of a satanic cult, and he is about to sacrifice his young son, Jonathan, so he could keep his youth. But unfortunately, his mother, Jonathan's mother, Anastasia, places a talisman around his neck, and that orders him to. Um, Not happen. And as a result, he fears that something's going to happen. So he orders his butler to take away the child and ends up sacrificing the mother instead, his wife. And then that's how it pretty much ends. The talisman is this pretty cool, nifty looking gold and red, I believe it's red, jewel in the middle. So we flash forward to 25 years later. Jonathan is now obviously a young adult, and he gets his father's estate, and he brings his girlfriend Rebecca with him. And upon arriving at the estate, they discover the basement, and a lot of the crazy stuff is going to happen down here because that's where they find all of the books on the occult and the paraphernalia. And this is where Jonathan almost died 25 years ago. But nevertheless, Johnson decides to bring his friends over, and they have a little fun with it. After dinner, they decide to have this little ritual just for shits and giggles. They think it's nothing that's really going to happen, but they do the ritual, and they think it failed, but it didn't. What happens is Jonathan starts to slowly become possessed, if you will, by someone, and also this is when we see the first of what's called the Ghoulies. And eventually, Johnson decides, because of the possession, that he's going to quit college and just to stay in the estate. And Rebecca's not too thrilled about it. And she notices that the changes in Jonathan. He's not eating. He starts to slowly descend into madness a little bit, but then there are times when he does snap out of it and they're back together, but it kind of becomes this on-off relationship. It's because it's kind of like The Shining. I don't know if this movie was an influence on it, but it's when a relationship starts out great, and then as one partner slowly dissolves into madness, the whole relationship is tend to be broken. So that's what happens. And one day, Rebecca comes back and sees Jonathan wearing the robe that his father wore a long time ago, although she doesn't know that connection that. And what happens is, apparently, when the night after Jonathan snaps out of it, they're back together and they're kind of doing their thing in bed. A ghoulie appears from underneath the bed, and the ghoulie is probably one of the reasons why Jonathan's possessed, because all of a sudden he starts talking in this very strange language like tongues, and Rebecca gets upset. So anyway, um, Jonathan not only has the ghoulies, he has these two dwarfs named Grizzle and Gritty Gut to who promise him he'll give him everything he wants. But there, of course, there's a catch. In order for this ritual to work, he has to have seven people to for him to get his full powers. And all of a sudden, this causes all hell to break loose because the friends are still there, and this ultimately causes the ghoulies to start wreaking havoc and killing all their friends one by one. And of course, we're talking about an eclectic bunch of people here. We have a couple of weed heads. We got a rich nouveau riche type character, and a few others. And eventually, Jonathan learns the horrible truth about what's going on. And this is after a confrontation with Rebecca, and it's discovered that this was all a ploy by Jonathan's dad. And this leads to chaos. So you can guess what's going to happen here, but what's interesting is that um, this was the first in the franchise, and this is the film debut of Mariska Hargitay, who plays Donna, and she's this new rich friend of Jonathan and Rebecca's. And this little tidbit I have to mention is they had to redub her voice in post-production because if you guys seen Law and Order SVU, Mariska Hargitay has this amazingly deep husky voice that fits her perfectly, quite frankly. But because of the role, they had to redub it to give her a more lighthearted voice, especially when it comes to her having to scream in one scene. And that's not the only craziness that happened in this film. We can talk about what's going on, what happens in Ghoulies as well. Even when production began in January of 1984. So let's get, and we'll talk about where the whole idea came from. So let's get right into it. So the idea came from Luca Bercovici, who had pitched it to Charles Band, who is who everyone knows today as the guy behind Full Moon Horror. But he started before Full Moon. His company was called Empire Productions. And this is where they had worked together on the film Parasite in 1982. And Luca Bercovici pitched this one location horror film, and Band loved the idea. And originally, Stan Winston was going to come in to do the makeup effects for the film, but unfortunately, he drops out of the project. And as a result, Band decides, I'm just going to serve as executive producer. I'll get the funding, but he thought Bercovici, since this was his idea, it would be better for him to take on the directing of the film. So production began on January 30th, 1984, at the Waddles Mansion in Los Angeles. And what happened was Hemdale Film Corporation was going to be the distributor originally. And during the fifth week of filming, that was the announcement. However, they filed a lawsuit against Charles Band citing misrepresentation after he allegedly misled the company in terms of the distribution. I thought the thing was going to be a theatrical release and potentially home video. So unfortunately, as a result, Hemdale pretty much got an uncredited distribution credit, but ended up just going to Empire. But what's interesting here is this was going on at the same time as the more popular Gremlins in 1984. So there's going to be this connotation, this comparison. They're going to say that Ghoulies is a ripoff of Gremlins, which interesting those both films were being shot at the same time. Unfortunately, Warner Brothers, learning about this, had attempted a lawsuit against them and ultimately lost because they may seem similar in the fact that little creatures were being used, but Gremlins took place within a whole town, where Ghoulies took place in this one house. So I think that's what caused Warner Bros. To ultimately lose the lawsuit. However, Charles Band ran out of money so during production, so he had to wait months just to get some of the funding to finish the film, which is why Gremlins did get released first and was one of the first rated PG-13 movies in history. But almost a year after production began on Ghoulies on January 18th, 1985, the film made its premiere in Los Angeles, and then it went to New York on March 1st. So, and I never, like, I saw this movie a long time ago. I saw this when I was about 14. And it's only because I saw the sequel first. And we are going to talk, the next episode, we're going to talk about Ghoulies too. But like, I finally got to see it, Ghoulies, and I watched it, rewatched it again just before recording this episode now, and I gotta say it's pretty wild to see. It does have it's going to be unfairly compared to Gremlins, but I also feel like this is like Gremlins meets The Shining. That's how I feel about Ghoulies. Ghoulies is pretty much Gremlins meets The Shining, and I think that's what makes this film work. And because of that, I think it apparently did pretty well. I mean, it feels going to make it made three sequels. Obviously, the original must have done pretty well, but yeah, but interesting enough, if you look at Rotten Tomatoes to this day, it does it's not holding really good. But on the upper hand, I think what really helped was the cinematography by Mac Alberg, and who a year later did the awesome Reanimator. He lensed that film. And then ultimately the Ghoulies were created by the legendary and recent John Carl Buckler. I think that's how you pronounce his name. John Carl Buckler did the special effects for this ultimately, replacing Stan Winston. And quite frankly, I think he did a tremendous job on this film. And the performances are great. Peter Leopis was really good as Jonathan, Lisa Pelican as Rebecca. I still can't get over the fact that they redubbed Mariska Hargitay's voice in this movie, but it makes sense. But I will say Michael Disbars really took the cake as Malcolm, Jonathan's father. Like when you see him on the screen, he really eats it up and practically was a scene stealer, in his stuff. So yeah, so Ghoulies, I'm gonna give a solid B. I had a lot of fun watching this one. And you can check it out now. It's on Tubi with I believe the other ones. I'm not sure if Ghoulies 4 is on Tubi. I know 1, 2, and 3 are, but definitely check out the original Ghoulies on Tubi and some of your other favorite streaming platforms. And if you do have a physical copy of it, if you have a physical media copy, stick with it, whether it's Blu-ray, DVD, or even if you have an original VHS, pop it in around Halloween season and or whenever you love horror movies and just just have a fun ride. Don't take it too seriously because it's totally one of those movies you don't take seriously. Anyway, that is it for the season 2 premiere of the Video Store Geek podcast. And I will be back in 2 weeks with Ghoulies 2. And that's what we're going to cover next. So until then, this is your friendly neighborhood World Film Geek, Albert Valentin. We are now in year 11 of the worldfilmgeek.com blog, pretty much. And we got a lot to cover this year with indie films and global films. So don't forget to check that out. And till then, as always, stay awesome.